Hey there, guys, and welcome to Naked Reality, a podcast all about stripping bare mental health. We're going to hear from people all over the world sharing their stories, their experiences, and their journeys with what they've been through in their life. But now it's time to get naked with our next guest. During all of our episodes in this podcast, we do cover sensitive topics. So if you or anyone you know is suffering with anything that we discuss, please listen to the end of the episodes where we can find contact details for us or support lines to help you with what you are going through. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, guys. We're in for another episode of Naked Reality with our next guest here, Mr. Jack Styles, a professional wrestler and community-based speaker. It's a pleasure to welcome him onto the podcast and to hear his story and to see what his way the world has been for many years. We had a little talk off air just before we jumped on, and you give me a little bit of an insight. So it's a bit of a strange way, obviously, that me and you met, right? I was just scrolling through Instagram one day and saw this post that somebody had shared about someone wanting to reach out and talk about mental health, and I got your email, jumped on, and got in touch, and we're not that far away, Perth and South Australia, so it's pretty cool. Nice to not have to juggle the time zones too much. But yeah, welcome, Jack. Introduce yourself, mate. Say hi.
Thank you very much. Really excited to be doing this. Like Joe was saying, I'm professional wrestler. Have been now for four or so years. Wrestled for a few companies here in South Australia under the name Jensen Hunt, which is been one of the saving graces in my life these last few years. Outside of that, Bunnings employee and just a general Aussie bloke, the best way to put it. And then, like you said as well, do a lot of work around the mental health sector, especially in the community. Something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I really appreciate you taking the time as well today to come on and take time out of your schedule to come and talk to us today and to share your story, man. It's this is what the podcast is all about, is to hear people's stories so that people can understand that they're not alone with the journeys that we go through with mental health. So it's a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So man, tell me a bit, I was a big professional wrestling fan as a kid. I used to be into listening, watching The Rock and Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker and all that. So give me a little bit of an insight to what it's like as wrestling in here in Australia.
Wrestling here in Australia is it's amazing and difficult at the same time, because obviously we don't have the population centres in Australia that you would in Europe or America or even Japan and parts of Asia. It is very difficult to sort of have these federations and have them run really strong. And not only that, but then to try and go over to Perth or Victoria or New South Wales or Queensland and wrestle, it's not cheap. It's not like you can just drive in your car and drive for an hour and you're in Melbourne. It's Melbourne obviously being the next biggest city to Adelaide is a 8-9 hour drive. So it does make it a bit more difficult. We have currently in Adelaide 4 groups, federations, and a lot of us sort of share amongst each other with the talent. But I would say that the wrestling fraternity is like a family. Yeah. And it's like a big family. And there's people you see all the time. There's people you don't see often. Certain family members you love to death. Certain family members you're just like, oh God, it's so-and-so again. Yeah, hey, how you doing? Yeah, nice to see you. But that's it. There's still that genuine care for one another. It is a unique group. Obviously, it's not like playing footy or soccer or, basketball or anything where there's a lot of people doing it. Cricket. There is a smaller, you are kind of a band of brothers together, but there is a genuine love. And a lot of those guys in that group have been instrumental with me, just again, with my mental and physical health, of just being motivational, just seeing me through and just helping one another just to reach that next milestone, so to speak.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. This is something I talk about a lot on the podcast, and the need for community and the need for that support, and not just in, in for mental health reasons. This is something that's really important in life, is to make sure that you're around people and you have that good network of people that are there to support, and you have a common goal, and you band together and you're there for each other. And as you've just explained, it is, difficult, going through mental health troubles, and it's always really good to have that behind you. And I guess for people listening, it's don't, if you don't have that, don't feel bad that you've not got it. But this is where groups, and for example the community work that you do, is you're opening that space to create these communities, which is really, really awesome, man, as well, to come off the back of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, and there's obviously, it's one of those things, and I talk about this a lot, is building those safe networks. And it is tough to sort of initially break that barrier, to talk to someone about your mental health, and because you don't know what their reaction is going to be. But I've been really fortunate. There's multitude of people, but there's guys that I wrestle with and work closely with. There's guys like Chris Basso and his brother Matt Basso, Luke Ramola, Andrew Douglas, Jared Gosling, Tyler Webb. They're just some names off the top of my head. There's plenty of other guys that have been real helpful, but like those guys, once I sort of started to get a bit closer with them and started to sort of, talk to them a little bit and, ease them in and just like let them in that little bit more and that little bit more. All of a sudden, when things started to creep in and started to creep up, I was able to go to them, and they were a safe person that I knew that I could just go and talk to. And there was going to be no judgment. A lot of the times they weren't going to necessarily just pander to me. They weren't just going to be, oh, you poor thing, everything fluffy. A lot of the times they do sometimes, give you that kick up the ass and say, is it really, is it something you really need to be worrying about? And, you sort of sit there and you think, and you go back and forth, and then you go, actually, no, now that I've sort of spoken about it out loud, it's now doesn't seem as big a deal as what it did, 2 hours ago when it happened. And yeah, just to be able to have those people and just have them there as that constant support network has just been huge.
Yeah, that's so good, man. It's so good to hear. And I think I was listening, I can't remember if this came from Jordan Peterson or whether it's from Joe Rogan. I'm not a big fan of surveys personally, but, because there's a lot of, a lot of people don't answer surveys and things like that. But I think they were doing surveys about, I think they asked people in America how many people are in your support network that you could feel you could reach out to in times of emergency. And I think they did one back in the early 2000s, and people would say, oh, I've got 3 or 4 or 5 people that I could reach out to. And they'd done one recently, and the most common answer was 0. That people felt they had nobody that they could reach out to in an emergency. And it shows, in the world of the increasing stats in poor mental health, in suicides and suicide attempts, in states of depression and anxiety and things like that, is you can see the correlation that a lack of community and poor mental health it brings. So, and you found out obviously firsthand at how important community has been for you in that journey and in going into professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it is true. And it's a thing with community nowadays. I think it's a thing with the world in general, is that as funny as it may seem that, we've got technology like this where you can talk to each other, you're in WA, I'm in SA, or, over the other side of the world, you can talk to each other face to face, yet somehow we're also becoming more isolated. And maybe it's because it's so easy just to text message someone, that you don't have that interpersonal talking with them. Whereas, all of my, the people that I'm closest with, and I would say there is probably a good group of about 8 to 10 people that I if I was to answer that survey, I could rely on in an emergency. But we see each other at least once a week, if not more. And we're constantly in contact with each other. We're constantly just checking up on each other. And there is a genuine care and a genuine bond that we share. And that's, to me, probably a big difference to some people that might be saying, oh, I don't have anyone, is maybe they just lost that human connection because of the advancements in technology that we have just made it so easy to sort of not have to talk to people.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's like, technology is one thing, and I guess the way the world is, and this is going before COVID and the coronavirus and what's happened in the world, is like we get so focused on careers and personal goals and things that we tend to work, come home, family time, a little bit of downtime. Let's, sit and watch some Netflix and go to bed and repeat 6-7 days a week for some people. And you really start to see is like, well, where's the time where you're going out and being in a community-based place, apart from going out and getting absolutely smashed at the weekend, besides like being in that environment of actually sitting down and doing something with friends that creates this common bond in this community. And you yourself, you'll probably noticed from the work that you do in terms of the community that these groups like men's groups and these circles that for community support and things like that are starting to pop up here and there, especially in Australia. I know they are. But there's this big myth of this thought that you have to have a problem to go and be a part of one of these groups, or you have to have something seriously wrong. And a lot of people don't want to admit there's something wrong, but again, there doesn't have to be something wrong to join in with a group of people. And it doesn't need to be the goal of this group doesn't need to be about mental health. It can be about knitting. It can be about weight loss. It can be about dance or whatever it is that floats your boat. But it's being with a group of people and having that common bond, which, it's so important. It's a massive part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you hit the nail on the head, where, so often we sort of lose focus on our own mental health and physical health because our focuses are, skewed. Like you said, you've got to, work and, get a career, and not only career, but you got, I want to earn more money and I want this and I want this and I want this. And, I fell down that trap once before. And the best thing I ever did was realize that it wasn't for me, realize that wasn't the path I wanted to take. And I'm 1,000 times happier now, earning a lot less money than I was earning that money. And, like you said, with these men's groups, there's 3 of them in where I live now, in South Australia. There's 3 at our local community centre, and they're exactly what you just said. One's dedicated to weight loss. One's dedicated to what's it bloody called? Lawn bowls. And I can't remember what the other one was doing, but yeah, and just sort of I see them out every so often because the community centre is just down the road from where I live. And when I go out for a walk and I see them out there, and it is a bunch of guys and they're all out there and they're all just doing their power walk and stuff like that. And it's like, cool. And like, you overhear them sort of talking together and, oh, how's your kids? Or, how's your wife and stuff like that. And again, that's where you start to create that bond, and you create that sense of camaraderie because you are opening up. And even more so, you're opening up to people that, however long they've been doing it. If it's 3 months ago, you didn't know these guys from Adam. You didn't know who this guy was. And now you're all of a sudden sharing what's going on with your kids or what's going on with your wife or what's going on with work. And that's a huge thing, to be able to have people separate from that part of your life to be able to talk to. That's a huge thing. Like, for me to have somebody to talk to about work that's not at work is a massive thing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel now like I'm whinging to somebody else at work about, oh my God, like, I can't believe this happened and this happened and this happened. I can go to someone and just be like, man, these absolute peanuts that I have to work with. And, right. And you just get that vent out and then you're like, oh, I feel so much better now. All right, cool. Let's go lift some weights.
Yeah. It's like, man, like you said, man, it's so important to have the outlet, because otherwise it stays up in the head, and then it, the thoughts just curtail, and then the more little things that happen, the more problems occur, and then the bigger the problem occurs, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden it seems like a place that's just suffocating you.
Yeah.
And so when you were doing your wrestling and stuff, and you obviously found this common bond, what were you sort of going through and experiencing at that time that felt you could reach out to these guys and speak to them?
So sort of before that, because that was sort of the end of the journey, I suppose. That, like, when I started wrestling was kind of when I made the decision to turn things around. So yeah, like before that, I mean, I'd been, as far back as I can remember, like being a teenager, I'd been going through mental health, and it just, being in the early 2000s just wasn't something that was really talked about. Wasn't something that you really kind of just knew what was going on. And so kind of just went through the motions and just figured it was just part of growing up, and just normal to feel the way I was. And yeah, it just became a thing of just consistent, just ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and you sort of went through it. It wasn't until I kind of got into my early 20s that I started to realize that something wasn't right, because once I moved out of home and, I bought my own place and stuff like that, again, it's that whole thing of you have these milestones in life. And I bought my own house and, got a job and everything's sort of going well, but I didn't feel happy. From when I was younger, I'd stacked on a ton of weight. I think at my heaviest, I was about 160 kilos. So I was quite a big boy. Obviously, that had a lot to do with it as well, because, when you're unhappy physically, you just have to look in the mirror and you're just going to immediately be like, oh my God, not happy now.
Yeah.
And yes, it just kind of kept going and going and going. And it did get to a point for me where I essentially, I just had enough, and I didn't know, there was nothing else for me. That life just had, I figured that this was the pinnacle. This is as good as it's going to get, and and if this is as good as it's going to get, what's the point in doing this for another 60, 70 years? And I made a choice that afternoon to end it, and it was I always say that it was a bit of a cliche moment, being that I had Johnny Cash playing in the background. I'd been heavily drinking, and I decided that no, I'm gonna end it, and got a belt, and that's basically how I was planning to go. And just at the moment that I was getting ready to say my final goodbyes, my phone rang, and it was my mum.
Wow.
And she said something along the lines of, I don't know why I felt the need to call you. I just did. And yeah.
Man, that's yeah, wow.
Yeah. Both me and my mum are very spiritual people. We're not overly religious, but we are very spiritual. And that to me was something that made me go, okay, somebody was looking out for me that day, and somebody was like, no, not yet. And made sure to tell my mum, you might want to check in on Jack. He's not quite where he needs to be. And when she did that, I opened up to her, and I let her know everything that was going on. And that was probably when I was about 23, 24. And that's when that was sort of, I suppose, my big first step, because I was able to admit to my family that there was something not right. Yeah. So whilst I didn't necessarily seek professional help at the time, I was able to at least admit to my family that there was something not right. And that was a big milestone, because that basically meant that my family were more in tune with my emotional state. And they knew that, okay, this wasn't just a phase. This was something a lot more serious. And again, hindsight being 2020, I probably wish I had sought help at that moment. I didn't, at least not professional help. But at the same time, I might not be where I am now if I had. So I don't like to live in that sort of world. But yeah, that was the sort of the first turning point was when that happened.
Yeah, wow, man, that's mate. That thing about your mum, and getting to that point where literally you're on the ledge, so to speak, and then for her to call you, that's life changing in itself.
Yeah.
Just that thought it's profound, it's powerful. It's like, wow, it automatically almost gives you another sense of, wow, there's something more to this life, or more to the world and the way it works than we know about as human beings, and that we get taught about at school and stuff like that. So it's that in itself is, it's crazy, because we can't make sense of it, right? It just doesn't. We can't go, oh, that's why that happened, and it's like, it's just, yeah, it's hypothetical, and it's what we want to believe at the end of the day. And it's so great that it's like it's come to you in a way that it's like, wow, man, this was, it's definitely not my time to go, and I've got much more to do with my life. And I guess that's where it's, the lead into what you do now has come from, right? It's given you a new sense of purpose.
100%. Because after that, like I said, I was much more open with my family and with certain people in my life. I was much more able to sort of convey what was going on with me emotionally. And, from there, I, kind of had a bit of an upward trajectory. Like, everything seemed to start to go well after that. And, I attribute a lot of that to being able to sort of talk to my family when I was having down times. But I don't think I was ever truly honest with myself in that entire time. So I was known at work as the larrikin. When we had dress up days, I was the guy wearing a kilt or face paint or just, going to the nines. You can see why I'm a wrestler. Yeah. So I was always the guy that would just be completely out there and just love to have fun. But in recent years, I've learned that it was a mask, and it was me being that guy, because that's who people wanted me to be. They didn't want to know who the real me was. They just wanted to see the fun-loving, happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, and it was sort of like the camera was on, and then when I would come home, the camera would shut off, and everything kind of then came out, and it was just like, oh. And after a while, that burnt me out, because I began to think, man, I can't just keep going to the same people with this stuff, because they're just going to think I'm a Fruit Loop, and they're just going to shut off in the end.
Yeah.
And so again, it wasn't until 2017, and it was just after I'd started training. I'd been training in wrestling for a few months by that point.
Yeah.
And I got this big promotion at work. Something I've been working towards for probably 18 months at that point. I'd been doing all these courses and so many things I'd been doing to get to this stage. And I finally got there, and all of a sudden I was in over my head. And my boss at the time was not a very nice person. She was a bully. There's no real two ways about it. Yeah. And she would really go out of her way to make my life difficult. Would say things and do things to me which were just not, you just wouldn't accept. Yeah. But I just didn't know how to react, because she'd been with the business for so long. And I'm just this greenhorn manager. So, what can I really say? Maybe this is how it's meant to be, type of thing. And things just began to spiral from there. And I began to drink heavy in that time, because it was a coping mechanism. Yeah. It was a coping mechanism to finish work, walk to a pub, pound 10 beers, go home, sleep, wake up, do it all again tomorrow. Yeah. I was working 70 odd hours a week. I was disconnecting from a lot of people, and just a lot of stresses were sort of building up, I suppose, in my mind. And it got to a point where, and it was October 2017, where I just went, I've had enough. I walked into work and I just turned around and said, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, and I was so burnt out physically and mentally that I was just, I was done. I was thinking that this was going to be the end of my career at Bunnings. Like, I didn't want to work for them anymore. I didn't want to have anything to do with them. And Bunnings is a company I personally love. You know, I've been there for over 10 years now. They've, you know, treated me really, really well. And it was heartbreaking to feel that way about that company. And thankfully, I had a lot of people supporting me and a lot of people understanding where I was coming from. And Bunnings put me onto a program called Eudoxia, which they promote, which is 3 free mental health sessions with a local psychiatrist. Oh, awesome. And my area manager said, look, you don't have to, but I would really like you to be able to take this up. And I was like, all right, you know, I'll do it. And this is now 2017. So this is 5 years after that story I told you before about me, you know, going through the you know, wanting to take my own life. And this is the first time I'd ever actually seen somebody about it. So I'd gone through this whole period and it finally was like, okay, you know, it's free. Might as well do it.
Yeah.
And I was very skeptical at first. I was very skeptical about going in there. But then when I did, I was able to open up in a way I hadn't opened up before. And I went through the 3 sessions and the psychiatrist at the end said something along the lines of, when you first walked in here, I thought you were going to be, you know, we're going to have a meeting once a week for the next 10 years to get through the crap that is going through your mind. She said, but you've made such progress in 3 months that she said, look, I want you to keep coming to see me when you need. And I do. And every time I do when things start to feel like, all right, I'm getting a bit bottlenecked with everything going on, I just need somebody that I can just go to and just let it all out and have a independent person to talk to. I give her a call, make an appointment, and we go from there. But it was that when you asked me before about, you know, how wrestling has helped me with my mental health, that was the turning point where wrestling and that community, it all started to change.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's so good that you've managed to find that. But I guess what's, you know, it's common between myself and in your story is that, you know, I was once at a point as well where I tried to take my own life, and you at that sort of a stage, you know, once whatever happens that you know, you don't get to that point. And by no means am I saying that you have to get to that point to start to make changes for yourself, but you do go through this pattern where you do something, and because it's a move forward and it feels good, it feels like it's enough. And that's where it's like, oh man, I got that off my chest, and it's like it's good. And then you think, well, maybe I don't need that extra help. Maybe I don't need that extra support because, you know, I feel better than I did when I was down here. And as you've seen, and I saw exactly the same thing for myself too, is that you feel better and you live your life, but the problems that are there, they still exist. And it's not that you're any less of a person at all because you have these problems. You know, everybody has problems that happen to them. The richest, the famous, the poor of the poor, you know, it's regardless of whatever situation you're in life, everybody has problems. But it's a case of, you don't need to, it's not a guilt feeling. You don't need to feel bad for yourself because you want that help. It's like, it's a move forward in life. It's a move forward to a greater place, and to a place where, you know, you don't necessarily need to go and follow the path and become Buddhist and, you know, have a life of calm and peace, but it's a move forward to keep you growing and to keep you in a place where you can have a happy life and you can feel good. And there's nothing wrong with going to talk to people about this, whether it's a complete stranger like you and me, for example, now, whether it's you know, a psychiatrist, a coach, or anything like that. You know, these people exist to be there to support and to help and to even just listen.
Mm.
Because how many times, man, back in that period of, from wanting to take your own life to the point where you went to see the psychiatrist, did you sit there by yourself and go over these things in your head over and over and over and over on the daily? And you just sit there and think, okay, I've thought about it now. It's like, maybe that'll be the turning point.
Yeah.
And then the next day you go, let's do it again. And you go over it and over it and over it and over it. And it just becomes this cycle. And the more you go through it, the more you go for the coping mechanisms, whether it's, like for yourself and myself was alcohol. Other people turn to drugs, turn to, lots of different things, food, sex, pornography, the anything can be an addictive thing to help subside whatever's going on inside.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not ever a negative thing to be able to speak out, which is the point of my little ramble there, I guess.
No, and you're 100% right. It's like you said, you do get to a point where you think, okay, I'm better than I was, so therefore I'm cured. It's all happy days. It's like when you have a cold and you get over the worst of the cold and you're like, yep, sweet, cool, I can go back to doing what I was doing before because I'm over the worst of it, and but it's not necessarily the case. Like you said with the spiraling, and that used to be me. I would sit on this couch and just think and overthink. I would overthink a comment that I'd made to a coworker or to a friend or to somebody at the gym, and I'd be like, oh man, what if they think I was saying it like this, but I wasn't saying it like this. But what if I? And you would follow this rabbit down this hole to the most negative. All of a sudden, you think you're going to prison because this person thinks you were flirting with them, and they are going to say that that's sexual harassment, and you're going to lose your job, and all of a sudden you're in this dark place of going. And all you said to the person was just like, "Oh, I really like your hair today," and you just follow this rabbit down this hole that all of a sudden you're going, "Oh my god." And that used to be me. And I would spiral to a point where I'd be out for weeks, a couple of weeks, and I wouldn't be myself. And people, because I am a naturally loud, out there, like to have fun type of guy. When I do sort of retreat into my shell, it's very noticeable. And it used to be a couple of weeks before I would sort of, okay, yep, I'm back up now. Nowadays, where I've been working on it so much, it's a couple of hours, and I'll start to have these thoughts, and I'll be like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm going out for a walk, or I'm going to the gym. I'm going to hit the punching bag for a bit, just like take my mind off it. And then you stop and you go, what was I worried about again? Oh, I can't even remember. It's something else has distracted me, and that comes from the correlation of mental health being like physical health. You've got to work on it. If you want to be able to bench press 100 kilos and squat 200 kilos or run a 10-kilometer marathon, you've got to start very low and build and build and build. You're not going to be able to just do it first time. If you can, that's awesome. But for 99% of us normal people, it just takes that slow build, and mental health is the same. And I keep a wellness journal. Awesome. I keep a journal where it doesn't get filled out as much anymore because I don't have the need as much anymore. But when I do have those days where things have really started to I had one last year. It was late November, early December. And, and I went to go see the doctor, and I remember just thinking, okay, there's been a disconnect here. Something's not quite gone right in everything. Everything seems to sort of gotten out of sync. And so I started to just fill it out again and look at the same things that were causing some of these problems. One of my big ones, and it always has been, is lack of sleep. I try and fit as much as I can in a day, and then I kind of forget that, I've got to start work at 5 a.m, and it's midnight now, so I've got to get 2 hours sleep before I'm up having a shower and driving to work. And, you know, and so when I start to notice that I'm doing that again, I go, nope, pull back, maybe, you know, and I'll spend a week just focusing on like physically, like recovering my body, you know, going to the gym for a light session, not necessarily a heavy session, doing a lot more stretching and stuff like that, and making sure, I get to bed super early and have a good 7-8 hours sleep just to recover my body.
Man, I love what you said about mental health and physical health correlation. I mean, it came up in my last podcast. It's come up in other episodes. Is that we as people, we go to the doctors to recover from sickness. And, you know, when we go to the doctors, we get some medication, or we get, you know, a prescription for something, or we get given something to help us to get better. And once we're better, we no longer need that thing that the doctor gave us. And that's the you know, the most basic of basic ways that you can say a doctor works, right? So when, you know, people say, I've got really poor mental health, and I'm not trying to bag doctors or the way they do things or anything, but we get sent to a doctor to go for mental health. So automatically this trigger comes in, is like, once I've been to the doctor and they've given me their thing that they're going to give me, and once I've done that thing and it's run its course, I will therefore be better. And I no longer need to focus on my mental health, because now I'm cured from mental health. And this pattern that forms because of this is that, you know, we get this idea that, okay, now I'm feeling better, I no longer need to work on my mental health. And the reason I love what you say about the physical health side of things is that, you know, it's from the moment we've been born, we've always had to work on something physical, even for, you know, people that are not so fortunate to be born like fully capable to walk and things like that. We still have to learn in some degree, and that has to keep on learning throughout life. And the same goes through mental health, is that it's not a sickness, it's not an illness, it exists day in, day out, when you're sleeping, when you're not sleeping, it's always there. And, you know, we need to have these things in our life that support us. Like for example, like yourself and myself, we've got the gym is a massive one to not just stay physically fit, but it's also good for mental health. Myself personally, I do journaling as well. I write gratitudes every morning. I go above and beyond for myself. I do yoga and meditation and stuff like that, just because I enjoy it. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to go down that way. You know, some people love knitting and that's their thing. You know, some people, I don't know, whatever it is, you know, that makes you happy. That's part of positive mental health. And, you know, I'm not big on talking about the whole coronavirus thing, but this is really important to know, to need at this point in time in life, that, you know, we're really, really fortunate where we're living, in the fact that gyms are open. We're still pretty much able to go out and do 99% of the things that we were able to do before. But we, you know, for those people that are locked down, like my family in England is, you know, they're shutting doors. I don't know, in stage 4, whatever that means, but it's they pretty much can't leave the house.
Yeah.
But you have to keep and have those practices still there to keep on with that positive mental health. It's so important.
Yeah. And you know, when you just said it then, like, just some of the things I do, like I do yoga as well. Like I started doing yoga when I wanted to lose the initial weight that I'd gained. I did yoga as that initial first step of just like getting the body moving again. And once I started to lose the kilos, you know, but now it's beneficial for me with wrestling. Like, you know, it does take a bit of a toll on the body. So, you know, it helps you stretch out the knees and the shoulders and back and everything like that. For me, you can see it in the background there. I do painting.
Beautiful.
So there's 3 of my pieces there where, and they're all mental health inspired, each one of those 3. And that's just something that I actually started doing that. I did it years ago. I would just doodle and, you know, just draw little things here and there. But then during lockdown, I just bought a bunch of canvases and thought, why not? Like, you know, I'm just going to paint, see what comes out. And, you know, I made those 3 and I've got another half a dozen. I'm notorious for half starting things. And Yeah, so I've got another half a dozen lying around here that are drawn out or half drawn or half painted. But again, it's finding those, like you said, finding those things that just calm you down and take your mind off of it. Because it's so easy with just day to day everything going on to just get into that rut and not have something where I can just sit there and draw for half an hour.
Yeah.
And I feel fine afterwards. And I think a big thing as well that you touched on is that a lot of the times when I talk about mental health and when I talk to people about mental health, I'm very, very clear to say mental health isn't a negative thing. So often when we talk about mental health, we're talking about it because of anxiety or depression or bipolar or suicide or anything else, or even some of the other illnesses, Alzheimer's and dementia and whatnot. Mental health is neither a negative or a positive thing. It is like your physical health. You are either, mental health can be positive. And it's very important to find those things that do make your mental health positive and do bring you joy. Again, it could be, I know a good friend of mine, he really, really, really just loves to sit down and play video games for 2 hours.
Yeah.
He just loves to come home, kick off his boots, pick up the controller and just play video games for a couple of hours. And then that's it. And once he's done it, it's not like he sits there all day and all night playing them. He just likes to play it for a couple of hours and it's like, cool. Like it's just relaxed him. It's taken his mind off of all the stuff that's gone on during the day. And then you go about the rest of your afternoon or your evening or whatever it be. And that's, one of those real big important things is finding those happiness things. Another one for me is, and I share them on my social media all the time, is I love finding quotes or pictures and interpreting them them in my way and how it relates to me and sharing like just little snippets of that story. I had one that I found, I actually heard on a wrestling podcast. It was by a man called Eric Bischoff, and basically just him talking about how if he lets negative people control his mood, he's letting them control him. If he lets negative people put him in a bad mood, he's effectively letting people's negativity control him. And I just thought that was, wow, like I've never really thought of it like that. Yeah, if you sort of just, if people are going to be negative and you just go, okay, that's up to you. It's not up to me. And you just sort of let it, and it does take time to sort of get to that stage because sometimes, we do take things personally and we do tend to go, oh man, like, have I done something wrong and stuff like that? I'm at a point now where I just kind of just go, meh, all right, I know I haven't done anything wrong, or if I have, like it's nothing catastrophic that can't be fixed. So it's kind of, you just go, okay, move on. Like, can I help in any way? No. All right. Well, hey, there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much you can offer before you sometimes have to go, right, I've got to look after myself here, and I can't spend all my waking moments worrying about somebody's, I misplaced my shoes. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. They were very nice shoes, but I can't, there's not much more I can do rather than just apologize.
Yeah. I know what you mean, man. I just finished today, actually, just listening to a book called, it's called A Monk's Guide to Meditation. I think he's called Jalong Tubten, the author offhand. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But he's right at the end of the book, he was talking about negative people and negativity. And he was saying that, we take on board a lot of people's negativity because when people are negative towards us or at us or with us, we feel as though it's directed at us. But that's because we're always looking from a place of from us. We're looking from, it's like, it must be me, right? Because it's coming to me. Whereas generally when people are negative or angry or, and you can't quite figure out why, it's generally just a reflection of their mood and their state of being and what's going on for them. So if we approach things with a level of compassion to say, wow, man, that, this person's really affected by, you know, losing a pair of shoes. You know, this may mean quite a lot to them, and it's obviously affected them in a way that, you know, it's hurt them. But if we act in a state of taking that on board, you know, all it's going to do is hurt us, and then we'll get emotional, and then something, you know, might be said that doesn't need to be said, or might not speak again, or whatever. But if we think and it's going, wow, you know, there's nothing I can pinpoint, so it's like, man, this must be, it's quite hurtful to them, and that's okay. And it gives you that sense of like, you know, I can sit here and listen, and I can sit here and be there for this person and not take it on board, because, you know, maybe they just need to vent.
100%. You know, and that's a thing that I've learned to really embrace is to let people know when you need to vent. So one of my biggest issues was that I would be that negative person, and I would sort of just be this crotchety guy that just, you know, went bananas at work over something trivial. And it was because I just had all this stuff built up inside that all of a sudden, you know, that's the straw that's going to break the camel's back. And a mentor of mine basically just pulled me aside one day and said, look, you know, perception is reality. And if you're walking around like this, people are going to think that's who you really are. If you need to vent, or if you're not feeling yourself, you know, especially people you're either working closely with or just, you know, in and around for a period of time, try and get comfortable and just saying to them, hey, look, not having the best of the day. You don't have to go into any reasons why, but just be like, hey, not having the best of days. If I seem out of sorts, don't take it personally. It's not you, like just going through some stuff. And I started doing that, and I do it all the time now. You know, if I'm just having a real rough morning, I'll just pull my team aside and just be like, guys, look, just having one of those days. So if I seem a bit off, a bit quiet, don't take it personally. It's not you guys. It's just working through some stuff. Yeah. And that's a huge thing for the person on the other end to then not feel like that negativity is directed at them, to not feel like, you know, and again, you still have that compassion. And, you know, a lot of my team, you know, oh, if you need anything, just come and chat with us. And it's like, yeah, look, you know, just, and a lot of the time it is just me, just working it through in my mind and getting back to where I need to be. But yeah, just being open and honest with people about your state of mind can be a huge benefit to relationships in the workplace, in social groups, or wherever. And I call them my black dog days a lot of the time. It's famous Winston Churchill quote was that when he was stressed, he was having a black dog day. Yeah. And I just say the same thing. It's like, yeah, I'm just having a black dog day. Just need to sort of do my thing. I'll be okay. Just need to do my thing and just move past. And, you know, everybody that I say that to, very understanding. They don't need to know any more than that. Yeah. If I want to let them know more, 100%, I'll open up a little bit more and give them that information. But that's a very important lesson I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, is just to be honest in regards to mental health. Because like you said, with negative people and negativity, it then people don't take it on as a personal reflection.
Yeah, exactly. And that, man, like, you know, these things that we're talking about, and you know about compassion, and you know, being able to open up and be responsible for the way you come out when you're having a bad time and things like that. You know, these are all tools, right, that we've learned through coping. One of the things that, you know, I'm sure from what we spoke about off air just before, is that this shit doesn't get taught in schools. No. None of this mental health stuff, none of this, any of these ways of coping and ways of being throughout life do not get taught to us when we're young. And I did a talk on this just before Christmas, and through the research that I was doing for this talk was that basically, you know, when we start school as a kid, you know, in this Western world, we learn about alphabet, numbers, and how to play. It was pretty much the basis of, you know, what you do in your first year at school. Whereas in Indian monasteries, like in where the monks are and things like that, a 5-year-old in their first ever lesson at school learns how to breathe. And the reason is breathing is the only thing that we are born with that is affected when all our emotions change, and only leaves us when we leave this earth. So therefore, if they can learn to control their breathing, they can learn to control their emotions up until the last breath.
Yeah,
And it's
wow.
like why are we not being taught this?
Yeah.
Like, this is because, granted, man, like I remember my teenage years, like granted, I had a lot of fun, and I have some very fond memories of my teenage years, but man, I had some, like, pardon my French, but apologies to anyone that's French just listening to this, but I had some fucking horrible times when I was going through my teenage years. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, I always forget, The Truman Show.
Yep.
Yeah. I watched that and I spent the best part of 2 years thinking that was my life.
Yep.
And I analyzed every single thing I said, and I watched every single person's reaction, because I thought they were able to see what I did the night before. So I actually went through a stage where I would say stuff like ask questions to people to see whether they knew what I was doing in my own personal time, just to try and trick this idea of this thought that I had in my mind. And it sounds absolutely mental when I think about it, but this is a trap that I've got into my own head through a coping mechanism that I've picked up to be able to try and understand what life is about, because of what all the troubles and the things that have happened. And I'm not saying that you experienced that, but I'm sure from a point along your journey, in the teenage years especially, there was there's that time where you needed something, and there was just nothing there.
Yeah, yeah, pardon my French. Yeah, teenage years were, hectic, and they were fucked a lot of the times. I tended to fall in this weird category, especially when I was at high school, that I was neither the unpopular kid, but I was not the popular kid. I was kind of just this own by myself. I could join in with any group, and any group would have me and chat with me, but I never really felt a part of anything. And you do get lonely as a teenager. Everyone's going out to parties and stuff like that, and even the parties you do go to, you kind of feel awkward because you're not in the inner circle and all that sort of stuff. And I went through this real stage of trying to, I would say that there's an old Simpsons episode where Lisa Simpson's trying to find her identity. Mm-hmm. And they do this montage of her just going through, like, she's a soccer player, then she's like a punk, then she's an emo, then she's a nerd, and then she's this. And that's what I was doing. I was just going through all of these different, I was doing anything and everything I could to try and find who I was. And I would dye my hair different colors, or I'd grow my hair long, or I'd cut my hair short, or I'd do this and I'd do that. I'd wear these different clothes, and it never felt real. I always felt I was playing a character. And that stuck with me for a long time. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, that mask that I would put on. It just felt like this character, and it just never felt real to me. And the one thing, though, going back to it, the one thing I always had was wrestling. The one thing I always had that made me feel happy was I would go home and I'd read the wrestling magazines, or I'd watch it, or I'd do whatever it was that I would do. And but that wasn't something for so many years that I ever truly embraced, because it was like, man, it's just so weird. Like, nobody else likes wrestling. Like, who am I talking about? I don't live in America, where there's hundreds of thousands of them. I'm in Australia. There's probably 2 of us, and the other one probably lives in Victoria or something. Yeah. So yeah, and I just went through this transitional period of trying to find who I was, and it wasn't until I grew up in a sort of country-ish type town. It wasn't until I left there that I actually really started to grow and to grow as a person, to figure out who I was. And I started to get groups outside of what I was normally associated with. And all of a sudden, you know, my family, and I love my family to death, English family as well, you know, moved out here in 87. I'm the first one in my family born in Australia. So, first one born out of the UK, actually. So, and, you know, my parents, very sort of traditional English family, both excessively hardworking. That's where me and my brother both got it from. My brother is the quintessential, you know, wife, kids, owns his own business, house, white picket fence, whole 9 yards, like the Australian dream, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm 6'4". I'm 120 odd kilos. I'm the only one in my family with tattoos. I've got long hair. I listen to metal music. I'm a professional wrestler, and I work at Bunnings. You know, I'm single. Don't all of that sort of stuff. Like, I'm kind of the complete opposite of where my brother is.
Yeah.
And that actually used to play on my mental health quite a bit, because I was like, man, my parents must just think, what the fuck did we do wrong? Like, we got this one son who is a shining example, and we've got this other one who, like, how are you proud of me at a dinner party, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what used to go through my mind. Like, you know, my parents must sit there and spend half an hour talking about my brother and all. Oh, and how's Jack doing? Oh, he's okay. Yeah. He's not in prison, so, you know, there's a positive. And when I finally spoke to my parents about that, and, you know, we were able to sort of like talk about it, and my old man, and he said something, and it was just completely off the cuff. Just, you know, we were just sitting there, we're having a beer, and I just bought a new car, and we were just sitting there having a few drinks, and he goes, you know what? You know, you got a house, car, a good job, a good group of friends, you know, and you're wrestling. He said, you're fit, you're healthy. He goes, what more could a dad ask for? Yeah. And nothing, it was literally, we had both been sitting there probably in silence for about 30 seconds. So it wasn't like anyone instigated this. He just said it off the cuff. And when he said that, it was just like, holy shit. You know, this whole time I've been thinking, man, what must my parents think of me? And, you know, funny, like, I always thought my old man was going to hate my tattoos. He's the one that loves them. Yeah. You know, and he loves it when I get a new one. My mum, on the other hand, she hates them. And it was the complete opposite of what I thought, of the reaction I thought I was going to get. Yeah. And, you know, when all of these sorts of things just suddenly started to happen, I just started to go, okay, actually, I do have a really good life going on here. And, you know, but when my dad said that to me, that was probably, I want to say that's probably the end of 2019. So it was sort of just as I was really beginning this recovery of myself, you know, and I was really starting to hit some wins. And that just sort of like motivated me to that next level of like, you know, holy shit, I do, you know, my parents are proud of me. I'm proud of me. I've got a lot of good things going on right now. And I started to just be able to live as myself. I wasn't scared of, you know, all right, you know, wear some weird t-shirts or weird jeans, whatever like that, man, who cares? Like, I'm happy. That's all that mattered.
Yeah. And that's good, man. Like, I guess for a lot of people, we have this sort of inner monologue that we decide for other people what they think, because it's like you look at everybody around you and it's like, ooh, you know, I don't seem to fit the family photo, you know what I mean, where everyone's in button-down shirts and stuff like that, and there's you in the big hair and the beard and the tats, and it's like just slightly off to the side, you know. It's that's the kind of image you have for yourself, and it's like, well, you know, it's, I guess if we don't have these conversations and we don't open up in this sort of way to people, and that's the way you will be, and it's the perspective you will have. And it's, I had one of my friends, he brought up something about perspective in a group that I'm in, and he said that it's a common thing I think they use in like relationship counseling, is the counselor and the couple, the man and the wife, or the partners, whatever they are, they sit down, and the counselor will put a dice, and they'll throw this dice on the table, and they'll give them a piece of paper, and it says like, you don't need to be an artist, but I'm going to sit here and draw the dice, and I want you two to sit here and draw the dice too. So they all sit there in like a couple of minutes and draw this picture of the dice, and 3 different people, and they get the pictures, and they look at them and compare. And it's like, we see what's happened here is that there's 3 people in exactly the same room, in exactly the same time, in exactly the same place, staring at the same thing. Yet we all see things from a different perspective. You see maybe a 6 and a 1, and then I see maybe a 4 and a 2, and then you maybe see a 2 and a 6. And it's like, we're all staring at the same thing, but we look at things from different perspectives. But if we push our perspective onto other people, we're only going to believe that what we see is the right thing, whereas other people don't necessarily see what we see. So it's we like for your dad, for example, is you've got this idea because you're not fitting like with your brother, for example, that dad's looking at the dice from this angle, and it's like, well, he's actually looking at it from a different angle, or he's moved around and looked at things from different angles. You know what I mean? And it's this is the trauma that we do for ourselves in our own minds, is we seem to think that because this is the way that I think, this is the truth, this is reality. And it's not until you have these conversations and you put yourself in this position where you realize it's like, oh my God, I'm actually now looking at things from dad's perspective, which is the perspective that I really wanted to look from in the first place. So it's these things can get crazy, and it's, I guess, just looking at things simply like that. And that's why I brought that up, because it's such a beautiful thing. It's so simple, yet so beautiful and profound in the fact that, we can get to points that, we automatically decide for people the way that they think about us.
Yeah.
And, whether it matters or not, that's what's going to affect us. It's our belief about that situation. It doesn't necessarily matter what the other person thinks. It's for the beauty of it. For yourself, you found that your dad thought the most amazing thing possible. But at the end of the day, if we choose to look at it from a negative angle, it's always going to be negative. There's never going to be a positive from it. But if we look at it from the fact of, what, I'm happy. I'm doing the things that I love doing, and that's cool. If dad, your mum or whatever doesn't approve, it's like, what, that's okay. That's fine.
And that's it. And I think it's it is one of those things. It is, it's obviously with your parents especially, it's very tough because your parents are probably, out of anybody in the world apart from probably your partner, they're the people that you probably want to impress the most. They've invested all that time and effort in you, and you want to be able to sort of repay that. And I just know now that like I said, my parents have always been supportive, they've always been loving, and like I said, me and my brother have just gone 2 completely different paths. Like, I traveled a lot when I was younger. My brother stayed, sort of home. And even now, like, where I live is probably about 50 kilometers south of where I live now. They all live in the same town, and I live all the way out in the suburbs, sort of thing, just outside of Adelaide. And, we've gone these completely different directions, but, you sort of boil it down to the simple things in life where, regardless of, if someone's making 100,000 and you're making 50,000, does, at the end of the day, cool. If you're happy doing it, that's all that matters. And that's what I've come to learn, is that I'm happy doing what I'm doing now, where I've got so much more free time. I've got so much more time to do things like this, to do wrestling, to do art, to, write poetry, do whatever I need to do, whether it be, like you said, just to sit on the couch and just watch some Netflix, and just to have, some pizza, a couple of friends around, and just go like, yep, sweet, let's just watch a couple of movies and, and relax. I've got that opportunity, and I'm happy and I'm healthy, and that's, at the end of the day, that's realistically all that my parents wanted for me.
Yeah.
And it was, and I remember joking with my parents about this over Christmas. We were just discussing mental health, and we just happened to get on the subject, and I relayed that story to my dad about him saying like, oh, and he didn't remember it, because obviously for him it was just the off the cuff remark, but obviously for me it had a profound meaning. And I joked with my dad something along the lines of like, fucking, you couldn't have said that 10 years ago, could you? Like, fuck me. Like, I went through all of that 10 years ago. We could have avoided all of this.
Yeah.
But no, as I said earlier on, hindsight's a beautiful thing. And hindsight is 2020, not the year, but
Yeah.
But I've had people before ask me when I do talks. I've had people ask me, would I change anything? Everything that's happened, 32 in a couple of months, everything that's happened in the 32 years I've been on this planet, would I change anything? And I've said, no, wouldn't change a thing. The good, the bad, the ugly, I would do everything exactly the same, because if I didn't, I might not be where I am now. And where I am now is such a good place for everything that I wouldn't want to risk that for anything.
Yeah.
And I've said that, like I said, I've gone through personal tragedy. I've lost people at a young age. I've gone through my own journey and my own story, but yeah, absolutely not would I want to change anything. And what you said about perspective, like, I was just thinking about it then. I was like, man, that is such a cool way of looking at things. Like, you think of a dice, and you could have 4 people sitting around a dice in each corner, and they're all going to see something different.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same dice.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else. The only thing that changes is the individual.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, man, it's, I guess the good thing to about your story and what you're talking about then is that, we go through things in life. Like we do go through really toxic times. We go through times where we feel like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel of what we may think is life. And there are also times where we feel like we're floating on thin air at the top of the world. And regardless of what happens to you, it's again, to go back down to perspective, is like, if you want to look at things, and I'm not, this may sound really blasé and really simple, but if you want to look at things in a negative light and you decide that's your focus, then yes, everything is going to be negative. But there's a way, is like, and it's what's given you the same perspective as I have on life, is like, I don't regret anything that I've been through. And the story unfolds every day, and it's a case of, well, if I look at my poor mental health, my suicide attempt, my many other things that have happened, and I go, yeah, that I'm a shit person because that happened, then I'm gonna feel like a shit person. Like, really, truly, that's how I'm going to feel, and I'm not going to succeed at things. But one of the best things I've ever learned about life is either you win or you learn. Failure is not what we think it is. Failure is just something didn't work about what you were doing at that specific point in time. And what lesson can you learn from that to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Or to try things in a different way, so that you can move forward with that. And that's where you come out with a perspective like we both share, that I don't regret anything that I've ever been through. Even the stuff where I've had times where I've been a C word, a C-U-N-T, let's just say it is a cunt, there's been times where that, I've been that guy. And, there's always that thing you say, if you had your time again, would you do it differently? And I was like, if you're just talking about that instance, would I make some different decisions based on what I know now? Yeah. But in the whole particular state of where I am now and how my life has worked out and how things have gone, no, because if I did something differently, like let's say for suicide attempt, for example, if I didn't do that, there is a good to fair chance that I would not be sat here talking to you now, because I wouldn't have learned from that experience and grown and gone, fuck, this is something I want to do. I want to talk to people about their stories and their mental health and broadcast it to the world so that other people can, feel that if they've been through something similar, that they can then feel like, wow, I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Like what you said about failure, I have these posters all throughout my workplace, and they're just quotes that I've heard, through podcasts or interviews or whatever it be, which to me, just reading it just gives you that sort of boost. Like, you just read it and it just kind of like re-engages your brain. And like what you said about failure, there's a guy, funnily enough, wrestling, that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from.
Yeah.
And his name's Paul Heyman. And any wrestling fans who listen to this know who I'm talking about. But he's had an interesting story of his career. And he said something along the lines of, you can't achieve success without the risk of failure. And, and he finished this quote off by saying, sometimes half the fun is failing, and, getting your ass kicked and licking your wounds and going, okay, I'm a little bit smarter now. And I'm a little bit more dangerous because I know now what not to do.
Yeah.
And I have that one up, and it always, a lot of people that read it, they just go, wow, I never thought of it like that. I'm like, man, so I've failed more times than I've succeeded. Trust me. I have failed a lot more times than I've succeeded. But each one of those failures, like you said, you learn from it. And if you learn from a failure, then it wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if something didn't work out, whether because it was yourself, like you said, if you're being a bit of a cunt, and I've definitely been there as well. I've turned my back on people because I was just in a different body, essentially, like I was a completely different person. Or it could be that you had a failed relationship, or you had a failed job experience, or whatever it be. If you learn from it, then it wasn't a failure. I look back at my time in 2017, and I'm a better leader now for what I went through then than I ever would have been if I succeeded.
Yeah.
If I'd succeeded in that period, I probably would have turned into the same person that my boss, who was bullying me, was. I would have been this bitter, vindictive, fuck you all, you don't know what it's like type person. Now, going back to perspective, I've got a good perspective on both sides of the argument. I'm in a middle management type role now, so I'm not quite in the big wigs of the echelon, but I'm not in the just the store floor team members type thing. I'm kind of in that middle ground, and I can see where the big wigs are coming from because I've been there, and I've had that big boss from Sydney who doesn't know who the hell you are, has walked through your store and doesn't know that you've had 36 people calling sick the last 2 days and doesn't care. He just wants his store to look perfect. And so I've been raked over those coals, and I know what they're going through. And then I know what my team are going through when they don't sometimes get the full story. And then I'm that conduit between the two of going like, cool. And one of the guys I work with, Scrimmer, he's amazing. I've spoken to him about this before, and he turns around and goes, man, like he's the easiest guy to get along with. You say jump, he says how high, because he turns around and goes, look, whatever you're telling us to do, you got it 2 times worse from your boss, and they got it 2 times worse from their boss, and so on and so on and so on, because the old shit flows downhill. Yeah. And that people like that, those sorts of people are just so good to have around because they just make your life you don't have to sit there and prepare for half an hour. Like, okay, how am I going to tell these guys that they have to work on a weekend over Christmas? Okay, how do I word this? I was able to just, with some of these stuff, which is, bad news or this is going to be a bit shitty. You kind of just go to them. It's like, hey guys, look, a big thing we've got, a slogan we've got at work is it is what it is. Yeah. That's just a big slogan we have is when things go wrong, it is what it is. You can't change it. You
That's
know,
what it is.
it is what it is. And that's all we say. And it's kind of just our way of just going like, cool, we'll band together. We'll do the job. Can't change it. So, soldier on and move forward. And all of that has just come from like, being able to have that outlook on life and that perspective, being able to have that, be that conduit between, different groups of people and be able to identify with them, I suppose, just comes from those, learnings that you have. You try something, it doesn't work, and you go, all right, we're back to the drawing board. Yeah. It's a big part of my life. You just throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. And if it sticks, cool, I'm going to keep doing that. If it kind of sticks, it's like, well, might need to work on that a little bit. If it falls off, it's like, all right, well, I'm not wasting time and effort on that anymore. Like, I'm going to find something else.
Yeah. It's beautiful, like that sort of relationship, especially you have with one of your colleagues. It's something that I try to teach is to many people I come into contact with is, if you go into things with a heavy heart, you're gonna be affected. It's gonna get you. But if you take things lightheartedly and like you say, just say it is what it is. That being lighthearted about it. You can't do anything about it. It's you can't say it better than it is what it is. And it's if you go at things like that, you're not going to get upset. Life's going to be happier. It's going to be easier, and you're going to be able to get the job done quicker and smarter and actually enjoy it. Whereas if you go in with a heavy heart and you go into work the next day saying, I can't believe we've got to be working on a weekend of Christmas, then it's just like, what do you think your day is going to be like? Those 6 hours that you're going to be there are going to feel like 12. You're going to have a shitty day. You're going to not be nice to customers. You're going to be, you're just going to be in a bad place. And then who's going to be bloody the Grinch at Christmas? It's you, buddy.
100%. And, and the way I worded it with my guys was like, it was going to be fun. Look, we're going to have some fun. We'll blare music, because we were working at night on a Saturday, this particular example. Said, we're just going to blare some music, have some fun. I'm very fortunate. I work with, obviously I work in a much larger overall team, but the team I work with immediately, we all work together all the time. And it's 5 of us. Apart from one young lad who's 19, we're all in a very similar age group. There's only about 8 years difference between all of us. But even the young 19-year-old kid, he fits in like no tomorrow. And there's good banter between all of us, and everything's very lighthearted, and it makes it easier then for when we do need to sort of hold each other accountable. We've got that relationship to be able to go like, oh, hey man, and it's not a personal attack. It's not, oh, he's having a crack at me and, he's a wanker and all this sort of stuff. There's a genuine want for that person to succeed. And I said to the guys, yep. And when we're finished, I said, I'll bring some beers and we'll have a couple of beers afterwards, and that'll be our own little private Christmas party. Yeah. And that's what we did, and I bought some beers and, we stood out in the car park and, at about 11:15 at night and had a beer each and, just shot the shit for, half an hour or so. Yeah. And like I said, you take that positive outlook to life or a situation, and all of a sudden everything becomes easier because once you have that positive outlook on life, or that positive outlook to what could be perceived as a negative situation, it's infectious. Positivity and negativity are infectious. And if you're positive, then your team's positive. And then when they're positive, the greater team that come and see us are positive. And people want to come out and they want to help and they want to be part of that. We have a really good culture in that team. We have what we call Fat Friday, where we get Uber Eats and from a local restaurant and we all sit around and eat burger. Today we ate 24 wings each, which I'm still regretting. Yeah. But people see that and they're like, oh man, there's a bit of jealousy. Like people want to be part of that experience that we have in this team. But then if we were to turn around and, this truck that we weren't expecting has turned up, or, these pallets have turned up that we weren't expecting, and we just get all negative and, oh my God, everything's doom and gloom, all of a sudden your productivity drops down. People don't want to come out and be part of it because they're just like, oh, fuck, we want to avoid those guys because they're going to yell at us. So they're going to be this, they're going to be that. And yeah, it is what you make of it. And like I said, that positive or negative mindset is just so infectious. And if you can get that vibe, you can get that, it is what it is. Yeah, that's all right. We'll smash it. We can do this. We've got this. Yeah. It builds a bigger thing. So yeah, it's definitely something that is a mindset that you just got to get into of, internally you can be screaming and sometimes there's plenty of times where I'm at work where I'm just sitting there just going, fuck. And, I can feel the hair just going grayer and grayer, like just as I'm watching things. But then, it's just that, all right, take 10 seconds, just a couple of deep breaths. All right, cool. We got this. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's dying. We're good. Let's we can do this. And it's fine to have that initial, Jesus Christ, more, how much more can we take?
Yeah.
But as long as you don't sort of carry that on with you, or if you just need to just blurt it out. And sometimes I do. Yeah. Sometimes I'll see something turn up, a big truck turn up that I wasn't expecting. I'll just go, oh, for fuck's sake. All right. It is what it is.
Yeah. Man, it's so important to have that light heart, man. It comes back full circle to what we were talking about when we first started about, the wrestling group and, the guys that you've surrounded with yourself there is what's happened for you at work is, who do you think somebody's going to come to if they're struggling? If that somebody in that member of the group, they're not gonna, if they're really struggling, they're gonna find it very easy to come to talk to one of you guys, to come and talk to yourself as the leader, or to come and talk to one of the other guys, because you have such a good bond and you got such a good team environment. And that's so important throughout many facets. You see it with two examples at work and in a social hobby and a second career. It's in terms of the wrestling, you've got the same knit group of people where, you may not be the leader in this group of people, but that bond and that camaraderie is there. And, you feel strong enough, no matter what you're going through, to go, I can lean on these guys. I know, I'm not going to whinge to them every single day about, what I'm going through, but if I really need them, they're going to be there. And that's what's so important about teams and communities and that sort of thing, which is beautiful.
Absolutely. And, I've, like I was saying earlier, I do talks throughout the community, and I make sure that, every so often I reach out to the greater community that we have in wrestling just to say, hey, look, if you guys need anything, come and see me, or, and a lot of them do. And a lot of them do come to me and, come to me with, it could be a really big deal, or it could just be something, man, I'm just not feeling it. And, I just don't have the motivation or anything like that. And I constantly say, even, things like the gym or wrestling and stuff like that, you can overdo it. And if you start to overdo it, that you start to become miserable doing it, it's time to just for a week, all right, pull back, just sort of let it all sort of settle down a little bit, and engage in some other things, because the last thing you want to do is to turn a positive activity into a negative activity.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you're just going to spiral back to square one. And there's nothing wrong with taking a break.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with taking a break from anything that you do, with no matter what sporting club you're a part of or social club you're a part of. And again, it's just finding that one person that you can go to and just say, hey, look, I'm just going to take a break for a week. I'm not leaving or anything like that. I just need to sort of be away from it. Because, I mean, anybody that's been, part of a sports club or a social club, they know that sometimes they can be, I don't want to say negative environments, but they can be sometimes, overwhelming. There's so much going on. There's conflicting personalities that it can get a bit much. And, there's nothing wrong with sometimes just going, okay, I just need to sort of step away from this for a week. And then after a week, you sort of start to miss it and you go, oh, no, I want to get back into it. And all of a sudden, the drama's moved on to something else. And you're like, okay, no worries, like, sweet, happy days now. Like, this doesn't affect me anymore. They're worried about the janitor not emptying the bins. And that's something that I really emphasize with a lot of people is that, it's great to have these positive hobbies, but make sure they say it's a positive thing. Yeah. And if you can feel that it's starting to lose its fun, look at the reasons why. Look at the reasons why you're starting to lose fun with it. And if you need to take a break, take a break. There's nothing negative about that. So, but the wrestling community in general is just for the most part, a real positive community, especially what we have here in Adelaide. And, there's a few guys I know over in WA and a few guys in Victoria. And all of them, mental health is a big thing for wrestlers and for wrestling in general. So, it's definitely something that we hold pretty near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And look, one thing I want to ask you, dude, like obviously with you, you doing the work that you do and going and speaking to the communities and doing all this beautiful stuff for the people around you. One thing that I notice is, I get a few parents that listen to this, and there's this big worry, especially in communities that, obviously for yourself, you experienced, from your memory, you experienced, what we call poor mental health at a young age as a teenager. Like, I'm not necessarily asking for to give the advice, if you could, to that teenager that used to be, but what things did you, like, now knowing, what that experience was, that could, what did you notice about yourself looking back at that time that are like triggers or signs of, possibly being able to have something to put in place so that parents can notice this stuff and help their teenagers or their younger kids?
So for me, probably my biggest sign was withdrawal. My biggest sign was that I would just withdraw away from even my family. I spent a lot of time just in my room and a lot of time just away from people. So that was probably my biggest sign. Outside of anything from just obviously, when you can physically see that I was upset and that sort of thing, obviously that's a very noticeable sign. In terms of triggers, I think for me, my triggers were always that trying to be who I wasn't, if that makes sense. My triggers were not fitting in and not knowing why I wasn't fitting in and not knowing how to change that outlook. And I suppose for parents, it's just a discussion that sometimes needs to be had, that I realize it now. Obviously you don't then. When you're a kid, you like to have 100 friends. And you're nobody unless you've got, I'm going to sound very old here, unless you had 100 friends on MySpace, you were nobody, sort of thing. But now for me, it's like, I've got hundreds, if not thousands of acquaintances. And people that would, if they were to call me up tomorrow and say, hey, do you want to get a coffee or do you want to go for a beer? I'd be like, yeah, sure, no worries. Like, it'd be good to catch up. But in terms of actual friends, I've got a handful. And that's the way I like it. I like just having that close group of friends. Number one, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to manage and to keep track of. But number two, like you obviously do develop a closer bond with those people. And so, I would say that one of those things, especially as kids start to enter that sort of 15, 16, 17, 18, a lot of the time that's when kids are starting to enter the workforce. They're getting their first jobs. They're starting to see what the real world is like. It's a lot of that sort of stuff. It's a lot of, don't be somebody that you're not comfortable with. Speak out. You know, if whether it be at work or at school or anything like that, if something isn't right, and if you don't feel that it's right, just speak out about it. And you know that, like, you know, you don't need to be. If you've got one really good close friend who, you know, you just have the best time with, that's more than a lot of people ever have. And that's, you know, and it is tough. Obviously, kids, especially in that era, in that time frame, are obviously very emotional and hormonal, and things are changing. And you know, they're about, like I said, they're, you know, you think about it. You go from year 12, where you're the big guy in school, you know, and all the little kids, you know, you're the top dog, and the very next year you're entering a job and you're at the bottom of that totem pole. You go from this social standing of being up here to being, nah, welcome to the real world, kid, and you know, pick up a shovel and start digging. And it's a big adjustment to make. It's a very big adjustment to make. And I suppose it is one of those things that you want to make sure with kids, especially if they are sort of directly entering the workforce, or if they are entering sort of different sort of social areas, just make sure as a parent you're checking in. You know, how's it going? I know both me and my brother have had bosses where they've just been the most horrible people. And my parents have basically just said, it's not really worth it. You know, and this was when we're both, you know, my brother would have been in his early 20s and I would have been in my mid to late 20s. And, you know, that just comes with, you know, emotional maturity. And so, you know, as parents, you just got to check in. And the more you check in, and probably the more you start to treat your kids, especially once they hit that sort of 17, 18-year-old age group, as you know, treat them a bit more like an adult. Not like your son or daughter. You know, if you treat them with a little bit more respect, and to let them make those mistakes. You know, let them go out, let them, you know, let them go out, do something, make a mistake and go, fuck. You know, as long as it's not going to, you know, be illegal or anything like that, you know, obviously, like if you know they're about to rob a bank, maybe you want to intervene there. But if they're going to go out and they're going to, you know, spend all their money, and then they're going to have no money to you know, do this or do that, you turn around and go, well, that's part of being fiscally responsible. If they're going to date a girl or a boy or whoever, and you meet them for the first time, and you're like, Jesus Christ. I'm sure that's probably what most of my girlfriend's parents think when they meet me. Yeah, and you go, all right, well, go ahead. Like, but you have to let them have that journey. And my parents did that with me, and my brother. They let us make those mistakes. They let us make those choices, and they were there to support us when we needed it. But you know, they didn't wrap us in cotton wool. Once we sort of got to that age where we could start to work and start to venture out, you know, you get your license and you've got a bit more freedom, they let you make those mistakes and whatnot, and they let us grow as people. And that's probably the biggest thing I would say with parents is that let your kids grow, let them become their own person, and just be that support beam. You know, that no matter what, no matter when everything goes to pot and everything is all of a sudden like, oh my God, you know, I've just made the biggest mistake ever, that you're that person there that's gonna just support them through that time. And again, you know, it's not a failure, it's an experience. So yeah, that's a bit of a ramble, but yeah, that's what I can probably say for parents is that with mental health, it's a big thing just to learn to talk with your kids, especially as they start to get a bit older, is to learn just to be able to talk to them as an adult, and accept that perspective that you said, that, you know, okay, you're worried because you've got to pay the mortgage and the car and the insurance and the bills and stuff like that, and you've got to go to work in the morning, and your kid's worried because, you know, somebody made fun of his, you know, his shirt. And okay, it's not the biggest dilemma in the world, but in their eyes it is. Because at that point in their life, that is the biggest thing that they've had to face. So, you know, again, it's having that perspective, it's having that, you know, understanding that, and again, that sometimes your kids might just need to vent, and having that open relationship of just like, you know, man, if you need to vent to me, I'm here. I do it with I've got nieces and I do it with them. You know, if one of them's, you know, they're all very young except for one. One's getting to that stage now where she's about to sort of move into high school. And I've said to her, I'm just like, yeah, if you need to talk, just message me.
Yeah.
You know, happy days, like no worries. And, you know, like I said, she's obviously not quite at that stage yet, but I would hope that, yeah, if she ever did get to that stage where she just needed somebody that, oh my God, like I can't go to mum and dad about this. You know, she's got a couple of really cool uncles that'll listen to her.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, man. It's a really beautiful way to look at things. And I think there's a lot of us, man, like I've just stepped into the whole parenthood world. Like my little one's 1 year and 2 months. 3 months, 2 months. I don't know.
Around that.
I don't think we're supposed to know as dads, are we? I don't know. Just as long as we're a year old, that's okay. But yeah, it's good to know, man. And like one perspective that I've taken from listening to people's experience about things like this is that, you know, at a very young age, parents stop being the kid's primary educator, but we don't realize. Like, I think it's pretty much like, I think it's 4 years old or something. We stop being the kid's primary educator once they start going to kindy and school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, and it's at that point we need to understand that, you know, we're not fully in control of them anymore. We don't need to keep them in this little bubble. And it's, you know, it's okay for them to make mistakes and it's okay for them to learn, so long as they have that level of support where you can, you know, they can feel they can reach out to you, or at least they have somebody, you know, to be able to have that line of communication with. You know, I think that makes a world of difference to what happens in the future, you know, because you can't predict what's going to happen. You can't predict whether, you know, like you said, you spent some time where you lost a couple of friends to suicide. You know, you can't predict that. And you can't say, you know, oh, you know, because I had a really good childhood that I'm not going to be in a bad space because of those things that happened. It's going to happen, unfortunately. And but it's good to have that level, whereas, you know, for yourself, maybe if you didn't have that level of, you know, support from your family, maybe things would have gone a lot worse for you at that time.
Yeah.
And it's so important for parents to know that it's okay for you, you know, to not be fully in control of everything that your child does, and to let them make mistakes. Just as long as you can be in a space where you can be open to have a conversation with them about it, that could mean so much more in the future. Just look at, you know, what's happened with you and your dad, for example.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, a big thing that happened to me, and it was that same year, 2017, was, you know, like I said, I was in a not a good way, and I made a mistake. I'd been out drinking the night before, came home, slept, got up early, thinking I was fine, went to go to the gym. And as I drove to the gym, I fell asleep at the wheel and I plowed into, of all cars, a Jaguar. So, you know, I didn't do it in half. I had to hit probably the most expensive car I could have possibly hit. And when the police arrived and they breathalyzed me, I blew over the limit. And my whole world just, everything just crashed at that moment. And I was, I'll give the two police officers that, took me in and, did the report. I'll give them the credit where credit's due. They were fantastic with just saying, like, look, mate, this is not the end. Okay, this is this is a blip on the radar. It sucks, but hopefully you learn from it, and we'll go from there. And I remember having to make that phone call to my parents that I've not only totaled my car, but I still had alcohol in my system at the time. And I was just, I was just sweating bullets. Like, I didn't know how I could possibly tell them. And I remember the first thing, I called my dad, and I remember the first thing he said was, is everyone okay? And I was like, yeah, there was nobody in the other car. It was a stationary car. I'm fine, a little bit banged and bruised, a little bit shaken up, but, I'm fine. He goes, okay, then. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, my God, like, he's furious and stuff like that. But both my parents were just very understanding. And they knew that I hadn't done anything maliciously. It's not that I was doing anything maliciously. It's not like I had intentionally gone out and been drink driving. It was just a pure accident, and obviously made me think twice when I got my license back. Was that, okay, if I have gone out and had a bit of a celebration the night before, to be a bit mindful if I haven't had much sleep in between when I wake up again, that okay, might need to hold off a little bit before I jump in a car. But my dad, he helped me from the financial point of view. Like, not that he didn't pay for anything, but he just helped. He's got a good mind for that sort of stuff. So he helped me sort of go like, okay, well, we can refinance your house and, all of this sort of stuff. And that was a gut blow, because I paid off quite a big chunk of my house at the time. So I kind of was going back to square one, but, it was like, okay, we can do all of this and get it sorted. My mum, she came with me to my court date, and I freaked out in the lead up to that court date. I was thinking I'm going to prison, because I had Google searched what the sentence could possibly be. And there was a thing in there saying it's a 6 months suspended, this is the fine, or 6 months in prison. And I'm going, again, because I hadn't, at that point, I hadn't really started to work on my mental health in the way that I would later on that year and into the next year. So for me, I'm doing the spiral. I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to prison. I'm going to go to prison for 6 months. And no matter how many times my mum would tell me, you're not. She said, if they threw everybody that was a drink driver in prison, we would have prisons everywhere. Everybody would be in prison, and that would kind of calm me down, but then it would just build back up again. And it wasn't until that court date. And I remember sitting there, and I joked with my mum afterwards. I even spoke about this at Christmas, where I was like, I was sitting there and people are going up, and there were people that made me look like a saint. People that this is their third time in 2 years that they've been caught, or they've been doing this and this and this, and they're all just, okay, here's your fine, see you later. Here's your fine, see you later. And my mum kind of whispered to me, she goes, see, it's fine, it's fine. And I turned to her, I was like, what if his wife divorces him before he, she sends him a text message, I'm leaving you, just as he's about to see me? What if that happens? He's going to bloody throw me in jail. He's going to be pissed off, so he's going to take it out on me. Again, it was just like all these negative things that I was just going through in my mind, like, oh my God, this is going to happen. Got up there, did my spiel. He did, I got the base sentence, see you later. And that was obviously a huge weight off my shoulders and a huge relief. But not once through that entire ordeal did my parents ever, you fucking idiot, you drop kick, you this, you that. They just supported me, because they knew they could see that I was ashamed, and I was just because I personally felt that I'd let them down and I'd let so many people down. But not once did they ever make me feel like I was a disappointment. They just supported me, gave me all that love. And then when it was all said and done, that was it. And 6 months later, I had my license again, bought a car for $100, and that was like, okay, this is the new beginning, so to speak, and moved on from there. So, but yeah, like I said, that was, that's a moment for me where even in my adult life, that my parents, you know, they knew there's no point in being negative about this. That's not going to achieve. It's going to achieve nothing. They could see that I was sorry. They could see that I was ashamed. They could see that I was just so angry and pissed off and everything with myself, that them adding to that would just be, well, you're kind of just banging your head against the wall at this point. So, okay. And I'm sure they probably internally had those, internally they probably had those feelings, but they were more concerned with getting me through that period and then moving on. And like I said, and that was all part of that 2017. That was all part of that horrible experience and that horrible period. But yeah, that year sort of was my big turning point where everything that went wrong could have gone wrong. Yeah. And from there, just I sort of made that decision that, okay, things need to start changing now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good, man. Like it's so good. Like, you know, we've said it many times. Obviously, hindsight is a beautiful thing, but you know, even for people that don't have the support and don't have that sort of thing, it's like, this is gonna sound really dark. I said it the other day, and somebody just went, "Bloody hell!" And I was like, look, you know, if you're still alive, then things can get better.
Yep.
The only thing that can stop change is death.
Yep.
And it is quite of a dark way of looking at it, but you know, this is, you know, the places that people get to, we do get to go quite dark, and it's like, you know, you can change things, no matter how bad they seem. You know, you can always make amends. You can always do something differently and change to be, or to do something to be the person that you want to be, or to get out of the situation that you're in, no matter how trapped you feel.
100%. And it goes back to what we were saying before about the mental and physical health correlation. It's about taking those small steps to begin with. You know, and it may feel trivial sometimes to keep a mental health journal, or just to do some like little things for yourself, but it is all part of that journey. That, like you said, if you're still breathing in and out, you can change thing, you know, and you're the only one that can affect that change. That's a big thing that when I do these talks, I say to people is that I can't do it for you. I can support you. I can give you every lead possible to follow a certain path. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to take that first step. You're the one that has to take that very first, I'm going to change. And again, it's no different to changing any other habit in your life. You know, if all you've eaten is McDonald's for the last 2 years and you go, right, I want to change, McDonald's ain't shutting down for you. No. So you're the one that has to go, right, I'm going to stop eating McDonald's. And it's the same with mental health. When I wanted to change, it was about taking those steps, and the initial steps were that you Doctor program, and then just all the other little things that I started to do. And again, you reach a point and you start to plateau, and you maybe dip a little bit, but then you know, that's the next foundation to then build up again. Yeah. You know, you don't start at the top and then build downwards. You start at the bottom and then you build a good level. It's like, all right, cool, I'm comfy at this level. All right, I reckon I can take this up a level now. And then you get to a next level. I'm good here. And then you just build slowly and slowly from there.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, man. I think it's a beautiful way to end the podcast as well. It's like, you know, that no matter what there is, sometimes it just takes the smallest of things, like writing down your thoughts and letting them out of your head, as opposed to them being in your head, as spending just 5 minutes every day just looking for things that you're grateful for about your life, and small bits of meditation, going for walks in nature, just those little things that cost nothing but just a moment of time is, you know, the beautiful ways to start on the path. It doesn't need to be some big, extravagant, explosive commitment to something major.
Yeah.
That will make the change. The change literally starts with you, and that's as basic and as black and white as you can put it.
100%.
Yeah, I love it, man. Dude, this has been like awesome. A really, really good conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed having you on. And man, the door's always open to doing this again in the future, man, for sure. But obviously, with you speaking about this and you doing your talks and stuff, are you happy for people to reach out to you if anything resonates and to speak?
100%. So my email is stylesj22@gmail.com. Or I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Very readily available to find on both of those. And yeah, I've had plenty of people reach out to me since I did that post a while back, just to run through some stuff, and whether it's talking, like having a Zoom conference with a few people, or going out and having an actual talk with a bunch of people. I'm more than happy to sort of to share, and really sort of share that story and listen to other people's stories, and give them like I said, those pathways that you can take just to take those first little steps. And sometimes it's just enough to hear somebody talk about what they've gone through, and talk about that, hey, I was in a position possibly the same as you, but like you said, still breathing in and out, because that's the only way you can affect change. So 100%, if people ever want to get in contact with me, my door's always open as well.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it, dude. It's been a pleasure having you on. And, I wish you all the best of luck with the wrestling career, with the talks as well. You're doing a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful thing for you to come and spend some time here with me today to share your story and help, man. Appreciate it.
Beautiful. No worries, man. Thank you.
Beauty. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Naked Reality, and a massive show of gratitude to our guests who got naked about their mental health stories today in the studio with us. Also, a big thanks to our sponsor here for 2020 and 2021, getsome.com.au, providing some amazing supplements from Origin Labs all the way in the USA and supporting our military veterans. Stay tuned for this important announcement.
For anyone listening that's in need of any support for any reasons for their mental health, please contact Beyond Blue on 1300 224636, or for the ages of 12 and 25 years old, eHeadspaces at 1-800-650-890, or for the ages of 5 to 25, Kids Helpline on 1-800-55-1800, or if you're in need of any immediate support, please contact Lifeline on 131114, and they're available 24/7 for those in Australia. If you are looking for any more numbers, if you can visit healthdirect.gov.au/mental health lines. There's a lot of numbers there for specific topics. And also on our website is ONU, that's o-nu.com.au/mental-health-support-lines. We have a list of phone numbers and contact details for many of the main areas around the world. If you are in need of any support, or you do know someone that this would benefit, please share this around to anyone you think may need it. Thank you.